Welcome to Wichita Liberty TV with Bob Weeks.
Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Wichita and Kansas government and politics. We're broadcast on KGPT, channel 26.1, also on its companion website, kgpt26.com. Some of you may know me from my blog, The Voice for Liberty, at wichitaliberty.org. The motto there is individual liberty, limited government, and free markets in Wichita and Kansas. I cover things that may not be covered by the Wichita Eagle or other television stations, or if we do happen to cover the same news, I'll be doing it from the perspective of economic freedom, limited government, and individual liberty, as these are the things that are important, and these are the things that are so often under attack by our governments, be it federal, state, and local. So please visit wichitaliberty.org. You can subscribe to the email newsletter, and if you'd like to contact me, you can find my email address there, or it's simple to remember, bob.weeks@gmail.com. Well, last month I appeared before the Wichita City Council, as I do from time to time. And the topic on that day was the approval of the plans for the apartments to be built on the west bank of the Arkansas River in downtown Wichita. We've talked about this before on Wichita Liberty TV. Well, here's how some of my appearance went.
I'm concerned, I think, as Susan Estes alluded a little bit, about the process that we've gone through to get to where we are today. Bill Wilson on the September 1st Wichita Eagle reported, he told us that the city manager feels that even though the process had problems, he's not concerned because the city in the end got the best deal and the process has been corrected. And Mayor Brewer, you were quoted as saying, if we're going to do these things, we must have a fair and equitable process for everybody. I'm concerned. I don't think it's sufficient to believe that we got the best result in the end. Whether that's true or not, that's not what we need to be concerned about. We need to be concerned that we have a process that people can believe in. That is, people who may be looking to partner with the city on projects like this need to believe that there's a fair and equitable process in place. And the people of Wichita need to feel that too. The regular taxpayers, the citizens, they need to feel sure that there is a fair and equitable process in place. Well, Susan Estes and I reported on the many government officials that were used as references for this River Vista project application. These officials that were listed included the city manager, the mayor, several council members and county commissions, and even the governor and our United States Representative Mike Pompeo. And our investigation found that none of these officials, except for one, were asked for their permission to be used as references for the River Vista project. And we also found that the evaluation committee, the committee that we're told looks out for our interests, that vets these applicants, they did not contact any of these references to learn about the city's experience with these applicants. And that's a problem for Wichita on several levels. First of all, think about someone in the future wanting to consider a private-public partnership with the city of Wichita. How do you think these people will feel when they see that the mayor, the city manager, council members, the governor, the congressman, the sheriff, the district attorney are apparently endorsing an applicant that they may be competing with? And another problem is that the evaluation committee did not contact these references. So what's the purpose of having the committee at all? And how do you think the people of Wichita feel when you tell them that there is a system in place to look out for the interests, but basic steps like checking references are not followed? And what might have been learned had we checked these references? Remember the criteria on the matrix the evaluation committee uses: experience with similar public-private partnerships and references, especially from other municipal partnership. Because with these applicants, we've had what? Cost overruns on no-bid garages. We've had misrepresentations made when appealing taxes, and the city had to bail out a failing TIF district with a no-interest loan, all from these applicants. And there's also this. The development agreement being contemplated today includes this language in Section 1106. It says, no member of the city's governing body or of any branch of the city's government that has any power of review or approval of any of the developer's undertakings shall participate in any decisions relating thereto which affect such person's personal interests or the interests of any corporation or partnership in which such person is directly or indirectly interested. Okay, so Mayor, you are a member of a governing body that has approval over this contract. And don't you have a business relationship? Don't you sell your barbecue sauce at Bill Warren's movie theaters?
That is correct.
So what does this mean? If we're not going to live up to that section of the contract, we should strike it. Someone should make a motion to do that. Let's also strike, while we're at it, Section 20450 of the City Code titled Code of Ethics for Council Members, which says, in part, council members shall refrain from making decisions involving business associates, customers, clients, friends, and competitors. Now that seems like pretty clear language, but city attorney says, oh, that's just simple advice.
Well, we've talked about some of these issues before on previous episodes of Wichita Liberty TV, about how one applicant team for a development project in downtown Wichita used many elected officials as references, but with one exception, none of these officials were asked for their permission to be used in this way. And while the city tells us it has a committee that is supposed to thoroughly vet and investigate these applicants, not one of these references were contacted by that evaluation committee. And as we've seen in past episodes, the city's experience with some of these applicants has not been favorable. Now, this is very troubling. How would you like to be competing against a team that says it has the endorsement of the city manager, the mayor, sheriff, district attorney, United States congressman, and the governor? Even worse than that, what message do you think this sends to those who might want to compete for future projects? Do you think that they'll need to line up the support of the manager, mayor, and governor to have a chance of success? Well, another thing that should trouble citizens is the mayor's business relationship with one of the members of the development team. That relationship results from the mayor selling his line of barbecue sauce in Bill Warren's movie theaters. Now, it's really astonishing that the mayor doesn't see anything wrong with this. Mayor Brewer has voted several times to grant millions of dollars in incentives to Bill Warren and his partners. Then his sauce is sold in these theaters. Doesn't anyone see anything wrong with this? And what's really astonishing is our city's newspaper evidently does not think anything wrong. This is especially a problem when there's language in the development agreement that seems, at least to me, to prohibit this type of relationship. And there's also the section of the city code that seems to plainly tell council members to refrain from voting on matters involving friends and business associates. Now, not only is this type of cronyism bad on its face, at least for people who care about good government, we have contract language and city statute that, at least to me, would prohibit this behavior. But no one in charge seems to care about this. What's really curious is recently the city voted to extend economic development incentives to Spirit Aerosystems. And the mayor used to work there, so the mayor recused himself from voting on the incentives for Spirit. Well, I think that's good, but how does that compare to voting for the guy who sells your barbecue sauce in his movie theater after you voted to send him millions of dollars? And how does that compare to voting to give overpriced no-bid contracts to your fishing buddy, as is also the case with Mayor Brewer? And even more curious was this summer when the mayor was noticed shopping for his personal automobile late at night at an out-of-town auto dealer. Brewer said he doesn't want to be accused of getting a special deal, in his words. It's hard to understand this line of reasoning. The mayor says he can't vote on a matter involving somewhere he used to work. He can't shop for a car in his hometown, but it's okay to vote to send taxpayer money to your fishing buddy and also to the guy who sells your barbecue sauce in his movie theaters. Well, let's take a break for a few messages. We'll be right back with Wichita Liberty TV. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. Well, in my presentation to the City Council, I showed the chart of job growth in Wichita, which we've seen before on Wichita Liberty TV. It shows that job growth, especially private sector job growth in the Wichita area, is very low compared to the nation as a whole and also to our visioneering peer cities. Well, those visioneering peer cities are Omaha, Kansas City, Tulsa, and Oklahoma City. And I think it's good that we compare ourselves with cities like these. But I voiced my concern at the City Council meeting that cronyism, such as what I just illustrated, is probably driving business away from Wichita. And let's see how the mayor reacted to that. And this is interesting because it illustrates some of the topics we've been confronting as we work our way through the book Economics in One Lesson.
We can show the people of Wichita and our future business partners that principles and process mean more than political expediency. That's all I have, and I wouldn't be happy, but I would answer a question if there is any.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
you made a comment and said supposedly cronyism is driving people away from the city of Wichita.
Yes.
Do you have those numbers or those facts to show that, or was that just an opinion of yours?
Well, there has to be some reason.
Is there?
I mean, why are we doing so poor?
Can you name the businesses? Can you name the businesses, and can you those that have been driven away?
Well, I think a month or so ago, Steve Clark was up here, and I don't think he's going to be doing any more development in Wichita.
Okay. And can you name anyone else? I know
No,
that one individual is not one that's going to drive that line the way that you.
Well, Mayor, this is the seen and the unseen problem. I mean, we don't know. There aren't people that come up here and say, "Oh, I'm not going to do it because of this." They just don't do it.
You're making the statement, and you're showing the chart, and I'm asking you to show me the facts. I mean, this is basically what you're saying. Is that what you're showing us is the fact? So I'm asking you to show me the proof.
Well, Mayor, how can we do that? I mean, we don't see the businesses that don't come here because they may feel that there's this cronyism here. We can't see those companies. Do they call up and say, "Oh, I think I'm going to come to Wichita, but no, I'm not going to do that because of the cronyism"? They don't do that. They just don't show up.
Hypothetically, your opinion.
Pardon me?
This is hypothetically your opinion.
It's not hypothetically my opinion, Mayor. It is my opinion.
Well, there it is. The seen and the unseen that Henry Hazlitt and Frederick Bastiat have told us is so important. Now, the mayor asked me to provide specific examples of unseen events, that is, things that did not happen. This is trying to prove a negative, and that's usually impossible to do. And even if the city knew of a company that decided against Wichita, it's not likely the city will trumpet its failures. That's unless it sees some advantage in doing so, such as advocating for more spending on incentives, which is what they do. We see that all the time, where our leaders tell us that Wichita doesn't have some special ingredient that's necessary to attract jobs. But it's really easy to see the scene, of course. It's right before our eyes, and as we're about to learn, government, through things like groundbreaking and ribbon-cutting ceremonies, lets us know about the scene. Here's Vice Mayor Pete Meitzner.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, just for the conversation, and just in the last 3 weeks, I was at opening ceremony for the third PetSmart on East Kellogg. Not that PetSmart's a big deal, except that they had their national representatives out of the Phoenix home office here, praising that they think that Wichita's poised for growth, and in fact that they just did investment on their own. Same opening I saw on North Rock Road at a Sears outlet center.
So we see the vice mayor pointing out things that are easy to see. Now, it's good that these things are happening, but you know that we need to consider the broader context. We need to consider, as best we can, the things that are not happening, that is, the things we cannot see. And you also know that we need to consider the effects of policies on everyone, not just on a specific group of people, such as the people receiving subsidy and government handouts. Well, the mayor went on to explain how important it is that the city have an activist economic development practice. And then when people like me say, "No, let's don't do this," then the mayor believes nothing will happen. The mayor said things like this before.
You know, I think that a lot of individuals have a lot of views and opinions about philosophy as to whether or not what role the city government should play inside of a community or a city. But it's always interesting to hear various different individuals' philosophy or their view as to what that role is, and whether or not government or policymakers should have any type of input any whatsoever. And I would be afraid, because I've had an opportunity to hear some of the views and under the models of what individual logic and thinking is, If government had not played some common role in guiding and identifying how the city was going to grow, how any city was going to grow, I'd be afraid of what that would be, because we would still be in covered wagons and horses. There would be no change, and because the stance is let's not do anything. Just don't do anything. Hands off. Just let it happen. So if society, if technology and everything just go off and leave you behind, that's okay. Just don't do anything.
Well, that video is from a 2008 meeting of the City Council. And it's really astonishing to hear someone take so much credit for the role of government in developing a city and its economy. You remember last year when President Obama said, "You didn't build that." Well, here the mayor of Wichita is telling us, you can't build that. It's worse than President Obama saying you didn't build that. Wichita Mayor Carl Brewer tells us that you can't build that. Not without government guidance and intervention, anyway. And the mayor also said it's only a small group of people who make the allegations of cronyism. Well, that's true, and I think that points to a problem. If the mayor thinks there's no cronyism going on in Wichita, and if city council members generally agree with that, I think these people are very isolated, cloistered, I would say. The mayor and council members are surrounded by people who work for them. That would be people like the city manager and economic development staff. Based upon my observation, these bureaucrats don't seem to be giving very good advice to the mayor and the council. Then, of course, there are the cronies, the crony capitalists themselves. These are the people who want something from the city, like the applicants to develop the apartments on the west bank of the river. Do you think that they will be honest with the mayor and the council members and advise them of the harm of cronyism? Not likely, I don't think, because they profit from this symbiotic relationship. But when the people of Wichita are given an opportunity to vote on a specific example of an economic development incentive that many view as cronyism, the people voted it down. That was the case with the overturn of an ordinance last year granting special treatment to the Ambassador Hotel in downtown Wichita. Well, another problem is the simple failure to recognize the gravity of our situation in Wichita. During the City Council meeting, Councilmember James Clendenin excused Wichita's poor job growth by noting our dependence on manufacturing, especially aviation. Well, that sector has not done very well in recent years, no doubt about that. But we've known for decades that aviation is highly cyclical, with lots of ups and downs, and that Wichita is highly concentrated in this area. For all this time, decades, our city leaders have told us that we must diversify our economy. And just now, city leaders are starting to talk about entrepreneurship as a way to generate economic growth in Wichita. But just this week, the city awarded a large economic development incentive to Spirit Aerosystems. That's our city's largest employer in its most concentrated industry. That works against diversification and increases our economic concentration. We need to recognize that these incentives have a cost and someone else has to pay. Who pays? Well, that would be the unseen companies across the city, the companies that we need to rely upon for a diversified economy. Now, the city uses benefit cost studies that purport to show that government actually gains by granting these economic development incentives. But do we really believe that? I mean, if we really believe that incentives like this are profitable for the city, and if we really believe that these incentives create jobs and prosperity, well, I might wonder, why do we grant incentives so infrequently? Or why is there a need for a public hearing if these incentives are so good for the economy? Why is there any controversy? And most important, why can't everyone have incentives like this? Think of the job creation that would unleash. Well, right now, plans are being formulated to generate extra money, perhaps through a sales tax, to pay for economic development incentives and many other things we want in Wichita. But we need to ask, if the incentives pay for themselves, why do we need an additional source of revenue to pay for them? I don't know if our leaders really believe what they tell us. Now, there is something the city could do to alleviate the problem of others having to pay for the cost of incentives. In the case of tax abatements like those awarded to Spirit Aerosystems, well, would the city consider reducing its spending by the amount of tax being abated? In this case, the cost of these tax abatements would not be borne by others. And also, we need to think about this. There are companies that expand in Wichita all the time without requiring incentives. Do we ask ourselves, what is the difference between this applicant company that wants incentives and those who don't ask for incentives? And there's still yet another problem. Recent reporting has told us what some of us have suspected for a long time. The city doesn't manage its economic development efforts. One might have thought that the city was keeping records on the number of jobs created on at least an annual basis for management purposes and would have these figures ready for immediate review. But apparently, that is not the case. So we need to recognize that because the city does not have at its immediate disposal the statistics about job creation, I think it's evident the city is not managing this effort, or maybe it just doesn't care. This is a management problem at the highest level. Shouldn't we develop our management skills of tax abatements and other economic development incentives before we grant additional? Now, I understand the desire by elected officials and bureaucrats to be seen as working for the good of the community. Therefore, when presented with opportunities that they are told will create jobs, they act. But what do we know? You may remember several months ago when the economist Russell Sobel appeared on Wichita Liberty TV. He told us that the uncontroverted, peer-reviewed research finds that targeted economic development incentives don't work if we consider the entire economy. And there it is, if we consider the entire economy. That means looking for the unseen effects, instead of just looking at the shiny new apartments or hotel or warehouse or factory that's built with taxpayer money. That means considering the effects of policies on all groups. Okay. Researchers have looked at the cities that have used another economic development incentive called tax increment financing, or TIF. We use it in Wichita. And these economists concluded municipalities that elect to adopt TIF stimulate the growth of blighted areas at the expense of the larger town. Yeah, it's not remarkable to see new economic activity within a TIF district. That's the entire reason for forming them. But you know that we need to consider not only the seen, but also the unseen. You know, as Henry Hazlitt has told us, that we need to consider the effects of policies on all groups. And the economists who have done this for tax increment financing concluded this. We find evidence that the non-TIF areas of municipalities that use TIF grow no more rapidly and perhaps more slowly than similar municipalities that do not use TIF. So if you are a mayor or city council member, you need to think about people other than those who are asking you for money. You need to think about others than your campaign contributors or your fishing buddies and someone else other than the guy who owns the movie theater where you sell your barbecue sauce. And if you're the city manager or economic development director or other city bureaucrat, you need to advise the mayor and council about this. Well, these people, the cronies that is, are doing well. It's the average guy in Wichita, the unseen, the forgotten man, for whom we need to be concerned. It's also, especially so, the entrepreneurs and startup companies that we need to cultivate. It's these entrepreneurs and young companies that must be the source of diversity and dynamism in our economy. These are the people least able to afford the cost of incentives to other companies. We're just not doing a very good job in this area, and I don't think we have an excuse. Well, thanks for watching this episode of Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks, and I hope to see you next week.